Hi, my name is Kevin Dorff. I want to give you a quick demonstration of an application that I'm working on called RetroPie romfilter. The idea is I'm building a RetroPie on a Raspberry Pi 3, and I want to be able to explore the details that are in the games lists that you get from scraping. So this application helps me explore that information with flexible searching. I'm using Lucene for a backend data engine and for indexing. Written in Groovy and Grails. Give you a quick introduction here. If you're not using Steven Self's scraper, please start using that. Otherwise, this whole exercise is sort of a waste of time. You need as accurate of information as you can get in your scrapes as possible, and that helps with that. You can grab the source code. It's Groovy and Grails. It's on GitHub. I'm trying to keep it up to date. It's pretty active right now. I'm the only developer at this time. I don't actually run it on a Raspberry Pi 3. It can be done. I've done it. It actually worked pretty well, but I don't recommend it because it takes a fair amount of memory to run this application. You can restrict the amount of memory you give the application, which will reduce performance, and that might make it okay to run on a Pi 3, but I just don't want to mess up your emulation. So feel free to try it on a Pi 3 and see how it works for you. I'd love to hear the feedback. Instead, what I do is there are two Samba shares that are provided by the Raspberry Pi in RetroPie, ROMs and configs. There may be others, but these are the ones we care about. I mount those on my Mac. On the default mount point is volumes ROMs and volumes configs. If you're doing this on Windows, you'll have to figure it out yourself. I've quit using Windows mostly. You're also going to have to set up a configuration file in your home directory. The configuration file name is there. An example one is here. The point is the ROMs and game lists and downloaded images aren't where they are on the Raspberry Pi, which is what the program expects, but rather they are on those Samba mounts. So we are configuring that. One thing to point out here is the trash path. The application here, RetroPie romfilter, has the idea of deleting a ROM. What that means is it takes it from the systems folder in volumes ROMs, or whatever your ROMs path is, and places it in a system folder here in your trash path. So you can delete things, and then if you need to recover them, you just go look in that trash folder on your RetroPie. Pulling the app down from GitHub is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to cover that. I'm not going to cover installing Java 8, which you'll need to do to run this. What I'm going to do is, let's get this started. I'm going to run over here to my terminal. I've already got this downloaded and updated. You can see I just pulled from a PR that I did of my own code. I do not believe I have an index in here already, or maybe I do. I do. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to start fresh, just like you would be. We're going to use this command that's in the page over here on GitHub. Gradle W, clean, run. The application will take a few seconds to come up. If you're having any issues, the startup will tell you all of the configuration options that the application is using. So like if your ROMs path was wrong and keeping you from starting things up, this will help you debug that. We can see here. Our configuration information is at the top of the startup, and it'll tell you, do those folders, what are those folders, and do they exist? If they don't exist, the application probably won't start up. For some of the systems, I've listed out which files are valid ROM types. You can extend that in your application YAML, but I hope to have that pretty complete in the final application. When we start up, we have no index. It hasn't scanned anything yet. But we can go to the application. Right here, it started up and it's telling you what the URL is. It's on localhost 8080. Pops right up, and we get a message from our table here saying that it couldn't find any data on the system. That's normal, because we haven't scanned anything. The very first thing we need to do when we first run the application is scan our ROMs for the system. So we're going to come up here to Systems and Scan Jobs. And after a moment, we will see we have no ROMs scanned on our system, and we have no running jobs. I want to say rescan all my systems. I'm going to click that button. We'll wait, and this page is going to start updating itself. Quickly, it's going to go through all the systems that it finds on my RetroPie in that ROMs folder and in that game list folder. And here in just a few moments, we have gone from nothing. It takes about 25 seconds to scan my system. I've got 5,023 ROMs now on my system. It's important to understand that romfilter now has a fixed view of your setup. It's not monitoring your ROMs folder or your game lists live. If you change things on your RetroPie, you'll see them immediately show up on the RetroPie. But for romfilter to have an updated view of maybe you added ROMs or deleted them, maybe you rescanned and now there's new information. Any of those things happen, you've got to rescan all systems here on this Systems and Scan Jobs page. Let's flip over to the ROMs. We now actually have ROMs because we did a full scan. We've got about 5,000 of them. I'm going to talk more in depth about how to use this search box, but real quick I want to demonstrate one fun feature of this application. Well, fun's not the right word. One interesting feature, which is that it uses infinite scrolling, so you never have to click next, next, next to look at more data. You can just scroll, and occasionally it will go back to the application and ask for a little more data. So it loads a little bit of data at a time. It is paging underneath, but you never have to worry about clicking next yourself. If you want to go 3/4, 4/5 of the way down the results, no problem. Ordering works pretty much how you would expect. You click on the columns to order, and I'll talk about that more coming up later in this video. Let's do a search. The searcher is really pretty flexible. You can probably search through your data in almost any way you can imagine. Back over here on my GitHub page, if we come down, I've got a few tips on searches and what they mean to my system, or more accurately, what they mean to Lucene. So I'm just going to do a couple just to give you a flavor of this. So if I wanted to find all of my Pac-Man games, and there's quite a few of them, not surprisingly, what you might be inclined to do is just type Pac-Man. You don't ever have to hit return. It's going to do searches immediately, and you see, well, this is probably not what I was looking for. So what I've done is I've found all of my documents that contain the word Pac or contain the word man. There's quite a few of these. Of my 5,023 total ROMs, I'm displaying currently 3 of 270. So 270 documents matched Pac or man. So let's tighten this up. I don't want to search for Pac or man. I want to search for the word Pac followed by the word man. And that's going to narrow this down a lot. We've gotten this down to 41 entries. So these entries span a number of systems: Atari 2600, Arcade, SNES, Mega Drive, a whole bunch. What if I really only cared about my Atari 2600 Pac-Man games? If I just start typing Atari 2600, this isn't doing what we want to do because it's doing a search for the phrase Pac-Man or the system, sorry, not even the system, or the phrase Atari 2600. So it's matched those things independently, but I want to match them together. The quick way to do that is to hit a plus in front of my search terms. So now I have to find things that where the document contains Atari 2600 and it contains the phrase Pac-Man. So we've narrowed this down now to 5 games. Pretty neat. But there is a difference in specificity on this search, in that if I wanted to find things that the description was Pac-Man, I can call out an individual field. So I'm going to say plus DESC colon, and now I'm only looking for that phrase Pac-Man specifically in my description column, which is here. It's going to highlight my matching searches anywhere they're found, but it's only searching for Pac-Man in the description column. Atari 2600 likewise could show up in other fields. It's entirely possible that a description of some game could say Atari 2600 just in that collapsed phrase like that. So let's actually only search my system column for this, my system field. So we put the system field in, and now we know we've restricted this search to Atari 2600 systems, where the description of the game contains the phrase Pac-Man. One last thing on this, let's take out the Atari 2600 part, and let's look at one more interesting field that's populated for many of the games which are indexed if you've used Stephen Self-Scraper. And that's my rating field, and let's talk about a little bit about ordering. So we're now just looking at games that are Pac-Man. That phrase appears somewhere in the description of the document. Not specifically that field. Okay, so now let's order them by rating, and we can flip back and forth which one do we want on top. So it looks like Hyper Pac-Man in the arcade is somehow the highest rated. The game list file calls it 0.94. I get everything scaled to 100 just for easy to consume. Miss Pac-Man, not surprisingly, at a second place, 88. And that's probably the best one in my opinion. And these will go down. But what if I really only wanted these that had some score? These down here have a score of 0, and often that means it didn't have any score in the game list file. So let's find things that have some score. I'm going to do a field search. I'm going to say, yes, I definitely want Pac-Man, so I'm putting a plus there, and now I'm saying I want to make sure that the size column has a value, and this is true of searching all numeric fields. You have to do a range. So I'm going to say anything that has a size, not a size, I'm sorry, a rating of 1 to 100. So now I've filtered that 41 list of entries to just 21 by saying I only want things that have a rating. Well, what if I just want things that, had to do as well in school as I did? So a 70 or above. Now it's only 10 games. So you say there's a lot of fields that exist in the game list XML file that we're not seeing right here on the screen. Right, we're only seeing the system and the name. This path doesn't exist at all in the game list. This is something I've created, name path comparison, to help me determine if it's a game that I want to keep. We're seeing description and the image, the developer, publisher, and rating, but there's a lot of other fields. This is all of the fields that actually pull out of the game list file. So we can toggle anything that's here now. We can come in here and say, I don't care about developer and publisher, so we're turning those off. I don't care about rating. But I do care about perhaps what region is this? And that doesn't seem to be terribly populated by anything for me. Release date. So we've got release date in here now, and again, that's orderable. The data in there is a little bit questionable, but it's as good as the data that's in the original system. So the final thing that I'm going to show you is deletion. We have 2 ways that we can delete things. I'm going to target play choice 10. So I want to do a phrase search, and we can even probably do it in the name field for play choice 10. I don't care to have these in my library. So I'll just go in here and delete this first one. This is Mario's Open Golf. So when I delete this, really quickly, it went out, it deleted it on the server, and it's deleted it from my index. So if I search again for play choice 10, it's gone. It's not in that index. And if I re-indexed at this point, it's not going to find it because it's in trash. But this is a painfully slow way to delete anytime you've got bulk. So I've got another 50 entries or whatever that I want to delete. So I created this really, really exciting thing, delete all ROMs matching query. This is dangerous. I don't let you do it on an empty search, but if you had a search that matched everything and you clicked this, it's going to delete them all from the index, and it's going to move them all to that trash folder. So let's do it. This is not an optimized deletion. I'm going to make this into a job, kind of like my scan stuff, but right now it all happens server side, and then we'll come back all at once. So it's working. It'll take a few seconds. Deleting 50 doesn't take too long. We went through, we can see what the results of all of these were. They were deleted. We're going to pop back over to Browse ROMs. And now if we search for play choice, they're not there. That is romfilter. Thanks.